The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson as it prepared to dip below the vast expanse of desert. A lone figure trudged through the sand, boots crunching against the grit beneath his weight. His hat was pulled down low over his face, shielding him from both the sun's glare and the prying eyes of anyone who might see him. He carried a shovel in one hand, its wooden handle worn smooth by years of use, while the other hand clutched something small and delicate, a locket that dangled lifelessly from a chain. Until this moment, John Harper had thought he knew what heartbreak felt like. Losing everything, his home, his cattle, even his dignity, had been hard enough, but nothing could have prepared him for burying the woman he loved under the watchful gaze of an unforgiving sunset. It was here, amidst the barren wasteland where sagebrush struggled to survive, that John stood before a freshly dug grave. The wind whispered around him, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and distant rainstorms that would never come. In his arms lay Mary, her pale face serene despite the tragedy that had taken her too soon. Her hands were folded gently across her chest, holding a single wildflower plucked from their ranch, a reminder of better days. As John lowered her into the ground, tears streamed silently down his cheeks. Each shovelful of dirt felt heavier than the last, as though the earth itself resisted covering such beauty. When the task was finally done, he placed the locket atop the mound of soil, its golden surface catching the dying light of day. Then, with a heavy heart and weary legs, he turned away and walked back toward the lonely cabin they once called home. But then, little did John know, the night held secrets far greater than any sorrow he could imagine. By morning, the world seemed different. The air carried a chill that hadn't been there the day before, and the stars above twinkled faintly through the fading darkness. John woke with a start, his dreams haunted by images of Mary calling out to him, her voice soft yet insistent. Shaking off the remnants of sleep, he rose from his cot and stepped outside, squinting against the first rays of dawn breaking over the hills. What he saw froze him in place. There, rocking gently on the porch of their weathered cabin, sat Mary. Her hair cascaded down her shoulders, untouched by time or decay. She wore the same dress she'd died in, but now it looked fresh and unwrinkled, as though someone had carefully pressed it during the night. Her eyes were closed, her expression peaceful, and the chair creaked softly with each movement. John's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he thought perhaps he was still dreaming. Yet, as he stared at her, disbelief gave way to fear, and then anger. How dare anyone play tricks on him? Had some vagrant stumbled upon the grave and dragged her body back to mock his grief? "Mary," he called cautiously, his voice trembling. "Is that you?" She didn't respond. Instead, the rocking continued, steady and rhythmic, as if unaware of his presence. Summoning all the courage he could muster, John approached her slowly, every step feeling like a betrayal of the respect he owed her memory. As he drew closer, however, he noticed something strange. Her skin glowed faintly, almost ethereal, and her lips curved upward in the faintest hint of a smile. Refused to believe what he was seeing, John reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against her arm. To his astonishment, she felt warm, not cold, as death should be. Startled, he recoiled, backing away until his heels hit the wooden steps leading up to the porch. "What sorcery is this?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His mind raced, searching for explanations. Perhaps it wasn't really Mary after all, but some trickster dressed in her likeness. Or maybe, no, he refused to entertain such thoughts. There was no place for supernatural nonsense in the Wild West, or so he told himself. Unbelievable though it seemed, John couldn't tear his eyes away from the woman rocking on the porch. She remained motionless except for the gentle sway of the chair, which continued without pause. It was unnerving, yes, but also mesmerizing, as though she belonged not to this world but another entirely. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time seemed meaningless in the face of such mystery. Eventually, John steeled himself and resolved to investigate further. If this truly was Mary, he needed answers. And if it wasn't, well, he supposed confronting whoever, or whatever, was responsible wouldn't hurt either. With newfound determination, John strode forward again, stopping just short of reaching out to touch her. This time, instead of hesitation, he spoke firmly. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the stillness of the early morning. "If you're playing games with me, I swear I'll—" But his words died on his lips as Mary's eyes fluttered open. They were not the kind eyes he remembered, filled with warmth and kindness, but rather something colder, older, and infinitely wiser. Her gaze pierced straight through him, leaving him shaken and unsure of how to proceed. "I am many things," she said, her voice low and melodic, unlike anything John had ever heard. "But I am not your Mary." Stunned, John staggered backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. Hidden within those words was a truth far darker than he dared imagine. Who was this creature masquerading as his beloved wife? And why had it chosen to appear in her form? Before he could ask, the figure tilted its head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You buried her," it said simply, though the statement carried the weight of accusation. "You left her alone in the dark." "I had no choice," John stammered, desperation creeping into his tone. "She was gone, dead. What else was I supposed to do?" The figure raised an eyebrow, its expression unreadable. "And yet you buried her without knowing why." "Why?" John repeated, confusion clouding his judgment. "What do you mean, why?" "She fell ill, and then she passed. That's all there was to it." A soft laugh escaped the figure, though it lacked humor. "Oh, John Harper, you are blind to so much. Your Mary did not die because of illness. She chose to leave to escape the burdens of this life." "She chose?" John echoed, disbelieving. "That's impossible. No one chooses to leave behind the ones they love." "But they do," came the reply, tinged with sadness. "Especially when love becomes a cage rather than a refuge." These revelations struck John like blows to the chest. Could it be true? Had Mary grown tired of their struggles, of fighting against droughts, bandits, and broken promises? He wanted to deny it, to insist that she had been happy despite their hardships. But deep down, doubt began to creep in. Crying out in frustration, John clenched his fists at his sides. "Even if what you say is true, why are you here now? Why take her form?" "To teach you," the figure answered, its voice dropping to a whisper. "To show you what lies beyond the veil of understanding. Death is not always final, John. Sometimes it is merely a doorway to another existence." At these words, John felt a shiver run down his spine. The idea of death being anything other than permanent went against everything he believed. Yet, staring into the enigmatic eyes of the being before him, he couldn't dismiss the possibility entirely. "And what happens now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "That depends on you," came the cryptic response. "Will you continue living as you have, bound by fear and regret, or will you seek the truth hidden within your own heart?" Before John could respond, the figure dissolved into a shimmering mist, leaving behind only the faint scent of lavender and the sound of the rocking chair slowing to a stop. Staring at the empty space where Mary, or whatever it had been, had sat mere moments ago, John felt lost, adrift in a sea of questions with no clear answers. Days turned into weeks, and still, John wrestled with the encounter. He revisited the grave site countless times, searching for signs of tampering or evidence that might explain what he'd witnessed. But the ground remained undisturbed, and the locket rested undisturbed upon the mound of earth. In time, John came to accept that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. Whether the vision on his porch had been divine intervention, a ghostly remnant, or something else entirely, he could not say. All he knew was that it had changed him, forced him to confront truths about himself and his relationship with Mary that he'd long ignored. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, John sat on the porch of his cabin, gazing out at the endless expanse of desert. The rocking chair beside him swayed gently in the breeze, its creak a comforting sound that reminded him of simpler times. Little did he know, however, that somewhere in the distance, a pair of glowing eyes watched him from the shadows, waiting patiently for the next chapter of his story to unfold. As the weeks stretched into months, John Harper found himself increasingly drawn to the mysteries of the world beyond his understanding. The encounter with the ethereal figure in Mary's form had left an indelible mark on him, one that gnawed at the edges of his mind like a restless wind. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to life and death than he'd ever dared to consider, and so he began to seek answers. The ranch where he and Mary had once lived together now stood as a testament to their shared struggles and dreams. Yet, it also served as a reminder of the emptiness that lingered in its wake. John continued tending to the land, not out of necessity, but because it gave him purpose. The rhythmic chores of feeding livestock, mending fences, and drawing water from the well became meditative acts, allowing him time to reflect on the events that had transpired. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, John noticed something unusual near the old oak tree at the edge of the property. It was a small, weathered box half buried in the soil, its surface etched with strange symbols that seemed both ancient and familiar. Curiosity piqued. He dug it up carefully, brushing away dirt and debris until the full extent of the artifact was revealed. Inside the box lay a collection of items that defied explanation. A feather unlike any bird he'd ever seen, a fragment of obsidian carved with intricate patterns, and a rolled-up piece of parchment yellowed with age. Unrolling the parchment, John discovered a map marked with X's and circles, each location accompanied by cryptic notes written in a language he didn't recognize. At the bottom of the page, however, were 2 words scrawled in English. "Find me." Refused to let this discovery pass without investigation, John spent days poring over the contents of the box, trying to decipher their meaning. He consulted books borrowed from the local saloon keeper, who dabbled in oddities and curiosities, and even traveled to the nearest town to speak with scholars and historians. None could provide definitive answers, though many offered theories ranging from Native American legends to lost treasure maps. It wasn't long before John realized that the symbols on the box matched those carved into the headstone of Mary's grave. This revelation sent a chill down his spine. Could the box have been buried there all along, waiting for him to uncover it? Or had someone, or something, placed it there after her passing? Unbelievable as it seemed, John felt compelled to follow the map's directions. Each X led him deeper into the wilderness, through dense forests where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy, and across rushing rivers that tested his resolve. Along the way, he encountered sights and sounds that defied logic. Whispers carried on the wind when no one else was near, fleeting shadows darting between trees, and animals behaving in ways that suggested they knew secrets humans did not. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of pink and violet, John arrived at the final destination marked on the map. It was a clearing surrounded by towering pines, their needles blanketing the ground in a soft carpet. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, its surface covered in the same symbols as a box. Beside it lay a single object, a mirror framed in silver, its surface dark and reflective like liquid mercury. Approaching cautiously, John hesitated before touching the mirror. Something about it radiated power, a force that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. But then, little did he know, this was only the beginning of what awaited him. As his fingers brushed against the cool metal frame, the mirror shimmered, its surface rippling like disturbed water. An image began to form within its depths, not just any image, but one of Mary. She looked as she had in life, vibrant and alive, her smile warm and inviting. "Mary," John whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Is that really you?" Her lips moved, though no sound emerged. Instead, a surge of energy coursed through the mirror, pulling John closer despite his attempts to resist. Within moments, he found himself standing in a realm unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The sky above glowed with an iridescent light, and the ground beneath his feet shimmered like molten glass. Figures moved in the distance, their forms shifting and changing as if made of smoke. Here, amidst this surreal landscape, John encountered beings who claimed to be guardians of the veil between worlds. They spoke in riddles, their voices echoing like distant thunder, and revealed truths that challenged everything he thought he knew. Time, they explained, was not linear but circular, weaving past, present, and future into a tapestry of infinite possibilities. Death, too, was not an end but a transition, a journey rather than a destination. John learned that Mary's spirit had indeed crossed into this realm, choosing to leave the burdens of earthly life behind. However, her departure had created a rift, a disturbance in the balance of the worlds. By burying her without fully understanding the circumstances surrounding her choice, John had unknowingly sealed the rift, trapping part of her essence in limbo. To restore harmony, John was given a choice. He could remain in this realm, learning to navigate its complexities and helping others like Mary find peace, or he could return to his own world, forever changed but unable to fully comprehend the mysteries he'd uncovered. Torn between duty and desire, John wrestled with his decision. On one hand, staying men embracing a new reality, one filled with wonder and discovery. On the other, returning allowed him to honor Mary's memory while continuing to live the life they'd built together. In the end, John chose a path that blended both options. Using knowledge gained from the Guardians, he crafted a ritual designed to reopen the rift and guide Mary's spirit to its rightful place. Standing once again at her graveside, he performed the ceremony under the watchful eyes of the moon and stars. Symbols glowed brightly around him, and the air hummed with energy as the ritual reached its climax. When it was done, John felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. Though Mary was gone, her presence lingered in the gentle rustle of leaves and the warmth of sunlight on his skin. He understood now that love transcended boundaries, connecting souls across dimensions and lifetimes. From that day forward, John dedicated himself to uncovering the hidden truths of the universe, documenting his findings in journals that would later become legendary among those who believed in the supernatural. His story spread far and wide, inspiring others to question the nature of existence and seek answers beyond the confines of ordinary life. And so, the man who had once buried his wife at sunset found himself rocking in a chair by morning, not alone but accompanied by the echoes of eternity. The days that followed were unlike any John Harper had ever experienced. His life, once defined by the monotony of ranch work and the quiet ache of loss, now brimmed with an energy he could scarcely contain. The ritual he had performed at Mary's graveside had not only brought closure, but also awakened within him a thirst for knowledge, a yearning to understand the mysteries of the world beyond the veil. John began spending his nights beneath the vast canopy of stars, gazing upward as though searching for answers etched in their light. He often carried the silver-framed mirror with him, its surface dark and unyielding unless touched by moonlight or starlight. When illuminated, it would occasionally shimmer, revealing fleeting glimpses of other realms, places where rivers flowed upward, skies burned with colors unknown to man, and creatures moved with grace and power unimaginable. Yet, these visions came at a cost. Each time John peered into the mirror, he felt a pull, a tug on his very essence, as though something or someone on the other side sought to draw him closer. It was a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying, leaving him breathless and questioning whether he was truly prepared for what lay ahead. One night, under a sky so clear it seemed endless, John decided to venture further into wilderness than he ever had before. Guided by intuition rather than reason, he packed supplies and set out toward the mountains, their jagged peaks silhouetted against the horizon. Along the way, he encountered signs that suggested he was not alone. Tracks in the dirt too large to belong to any known animal, whispers carried on the wind that formed no discernible words, and the occasional flicker of movement just beyond the edge of sight. By midday, John reached the base of the mountains, where a narrow trail wound upward through towering pines. The air grew cooler as he climbed, carried with it the scent of pine resin and damp earth. Bird song faded away, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. Higher still, the trees thinned, giving way to rocky outcrops and patches of snow that clung stubbornly to the ground despite the season. It was here, near the summit, that John stumbled upon a cave hidden behind a curtain of icicles. Its entrance yawned wide, inviting yet foreboding. For a moment he hesitated, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver holstered at his side. But then, little did he know, this was precisely where his journey needed to lead him. Summoning courage born of desperation and curiosity, John stepped inside. The interior of the cave was dimly lit by shafts of sunlight filtering through cracks in the ceiling, casting patterns on the walls that shifted and danced like living things. As he ventured deeper, the temperature dropped sharply, and the air grew thick with moisture. Strange symbols carved into the stone glowed faintly, their light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. At the heart of the cavern stood another altar, this one larger and more ornate than the one from the clearing. Upon it rested an object that made John's breath catch in his throat, a crystal sphere, its surface swirling with colors that defied description. Surrounding the sphere were tools of unknown purpose, knives with blades of obsidian, bowls filled with glowing powders, and scrolls written in languages that twisted and writhed like serpents as he tried to read them. Refused to let fear dictate his actions, John approached the altar cautiously. His fingers brushed against the crystal sphere, and immediately visions flooded his mind. He saw worlds beyond count, each unique yet interconnected, their histories woven together like threads in a grand tapestry. He witnessed battles fought not with guns or swords, but with thoughts and emotions, conflicts that reshaped entire realities. And he felt the presence of beings far older and wiser than himself, entities watching and waiting, their intentions unclear. Among these visions, one stood out above all others, a figure cloaked in shadow, standing atop a mountain peak that pierced the clouds. The figure turned to face him, its features obscured yet unmistakably familiar. "You have taken your first steps," it said, its voice resonating in John's mind rather than his ears. "But the path ahead is fraught with danger. Are you ready to embrace the truth?" Before John could answer, the vision dissolved, leaving him kneeling before the altar, gasping for breath. His hands trembled as he realized the magnitude of what he had been shown. The universe was far vaster and more complex than he had ever imagined, and his role within it, whatever it might be, was only beginning to unfold. Back outside, the sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. John descended the mountain slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew now that the events surrounding Mary's death were merely the tip of an iceberg, a glimpse into forces that operated beyond human comprehension. Yet, instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of peace, a conviction that everything happened for a reason, even if that reason remained hidden. Upon returning to the ranch, John found himself drawn to the rocking chair on the porch. It had become a symbol of sorts, representing the intersection between his old life and the new one unfolding before him. Seated there one evening, he noticed something unusual. The locket he had placed on Mary's grave now rested in his lap, its chain intact and gleaming as though newly polished. Opening the locket revealed a photograph of Mary, her smile radiant and full of life. Beneath the photo, however, was a message etched into the metal. "Remember me, but do not mourn." Tears welled in John's eyes as he stared at the inscription. Whether the message had always been there or had appeared only recently, he couldn't say. What mattered was the clarity it provided. Mary had chosen her path, and now it was time for him to choose his own. From that day forward, John dedicated himself fully to exploring the mysteries of the world. He traveled far and wide, seeking out others who shared his curiosity and gathering knowledge from sources both mundane and extraordinary. Along the way, he encountered wonders and horrors alike, experiences that tested his resolve and expanded his understanding. And though he never forgot Mary, her memory became a source of strength rather than sorrow. She had taught him that love transcended boundaries, and now he lived his life in service to that truth. As the years passed, stories of John Harper spread throughout the Wild West. Some called him a seeker, others a wanderer, and still others a madman. But those who truly knew him understood that he was none of these things, and all of them at once. For in embracing the unknown, John had discovered a purpose greater than himself, one that connected him to the infinite expanse of existence. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting long shadows across the land, John sat on his porch, the rocking chair creaking softly beneath him. In his hands, he held the locket, its surface warm to the touch. Around him, the world stretched endlessly, filled with secrets waiting to be uncovered and truths longing to be understood. Little did anyone know, the story of John Harper was only beginning. The years rolled on like the endless tide of a great river, each day bringing John Harper closer to truths that defied the boundaries of his world. His journey had transformed him from a grieving widower into something more, a seeker of hidden knowledge, a guardian of secrets ancient and profound. Yet, with every step forward, the questions multiplied, their answers often leading to deeper mysteries. One evening, as the moon hung low and full over the desert, casting an ethereal glow upon the land, John received a visitor. It was not the kind of visitation one might expect in the Wild West, a gunslinger seeking trouble or a wanderer in need of shelter, but rather something far stranger. A figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of his property, its form shifting and indistinct, yet unmistakably human. John stood on the porch, his hand instinctively moving toward the revolver at his side, though he doubted it would do much good against whatever this entity might be. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice steady despite the unease coiling in his gut. "I am one who watches," came the reply, the voice smooth and resonant, carrying within echoes of both nearness and distance. The figure stepped closer, resolving into the shape of a man, or at least what appeared to be a man. His features were sharp, his eyes gleaming with an inner light that seemed to pierce through John's very soul. "And why have you come?" John asked, refusing to let his guard down even as curiosity tugged at him. "To offer guidance," the figure said, tilting his head slightly. "You stand at a crossroads, John Harper. Your path has taken you far, but is about to take you further still." Before John could respond, the figure extended a hand, revealing an object clutched within his grasp. It was a small, intricately carved box, its surface adorned with symbols identical to those John had encountered in the mountains and on Mary's locket. The resemblance was undeniable, but there was something different about this box. Something darker, heavier, as though it carried within it the weight of untold ages. "What is this?" John asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It is a key," the figure replied. "A key to doors long closed, to places unseen by mortal eyes. But beware, for not all doors should be open, and not all truths can be born." With those cryptic words, the figure placed the box in John's hands and vanished as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and the sound of distant thunder. Staring at the box, John felt a mixture of awe and trepidation. He knew instinctively that this was no ordinary artifact. It was a piece of the puzzle he had been piecing together for so long. That night, John sat by the fire in his cabin, the box resting before him on the table. Its surface glowed faintly under flickering light, the symbols pulsing rhythmically as though alive. Unbelievable as it seemed, John felt drawn to unlock its secrets, compelled by forces beyond his control. With trembling fingers, he opened the lid. Inside, he found 3 objects: a shard of glass blacker than midnight, a vial containing liquid that shimmered like liquid starlight, and a folded sheet of parchment. Unrolling the parchment, John discovered another map, this one far more complex than the first. It depicted not just locations on Earth, but also celestial bodies and strange configurations of stars. Each point on the map was labeled with symbols that corresponded to those on the box and the artifacts within. Refused to ignore the implications, John spent hours studying the map, tracing connections between the symbols and attempting to decipher their meanings. As he worked, the air around him grew colder, and the flames in the fireplace danced erratically, as though disturbed by some unseen presence. It was clear that whatever lay ahead, it was not meant for the faint of heart. Determined to uncover the truth, John packed his supplies and set out once again, following the map's directions. This time, however, the journey led him not to familiar landscapes, but to places that defied logic. He crossed deserts where sand turned to crystal beneath his feet, forests where trees whispered secrets in languages forgotten by man, and rivers that flowed upward, defying gravity itself. Along the way, John encountered beings that tested his resolve. Some were benevolent, offering guidance and warnings. Others were malevolent, seeking to deter him from his path. Through it all, John pressed onward, driven by a combination of hope and fear. Finally, after weeks of travel, John arrived at the destination marked on the map, a cavern deep beneath the earth, its entrance guarded by statues carved from obsidian, their forms resembling creatures from nightmares. Inside, the air thrummed with energy, and the walls glowed with veins of phosphorescent minerals. At the center of the cavern stood a massive door, its surface etched with the same symbols John had seen throughout his journey. As he approached the door, John felt the pull he had experienced with the mirror grow stronger, almost unbearable. Yet he knew he could not turn back now. Drawing upon all the knowledge he had gathered, he arranged the artifacts from the box according to the patterns on the door. The shard of glass fit perfectly into a groove, the vial's contents spilled onto a designated plate, and the map aligned with markings on the frame. When everything was in place, the door shuddered and groaned, its hinges creaking as though unused for millennia. Slowly, it swung open, revealing a chamber bathed in light, so brilliant it made John shield his eyes. Within the chamber stood a figure cloaked in robes of silver and gold, its face obscured by a hood. "You have proven yourself worthy," the figure intoned, its voice resonating like a chorus of bells. "But know this, the knowledge you seek comes at a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" John hesitated, weighing the question in his mind. He thought of Mary, of the lessons she had taught him, of the love that transcended death. He thought of the wonders and dangers he had faced, the truths he had uncovered. And finally he nodded. "I am ready," he said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty within him. The figure raised a hand, and the chamber began to shift and change, its walls dissolving into nothingness. In its place, John found himself standing amidst a vast expanse of stars, their light illuminating everything around him. Here, he saw not just the past and present, but glimpses of futures yet to come, realities shaped by choices yet unmade. And as the vision unfolded before him, John Harper understood that his journey was far from over. For in embracing the unknown, he had become part of something greater than himself, a thread in the tapestry of existence woven across time and space. Little did anyone know, the story of John Harper was only beginning, and would continue to unfold one revelation at a time until the very end of days.